I'm an alcoholic. Can you talk to me about CIA disguises?
No, they're good.
Really?
Yeah, there's some great books on this. There's a couple former CIA disguise techs who've written books on that. And in fact, we would, what the CIA did, again, this is all out in public, is they actually went and worked with Hollywood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so some of the top Hollywood, kind of disguise or makeup artists and technicians. And so, yeah, because, ultimately the idea is not to get caught. And so it's pretty cool.
So what was your disguise? You're allowed to tell me?
I mean, I have a goatee now. It's kind of hard, but you put a wig on, fake mustache, stuff like that. It's the idea of people glancing at you and not knowing who you are.
And you're trying to look like
someone else,
Iraqi or Afghan
or whatever. I mean, one of the coolest things, and I talk about in the book, is how successful female operations officers are in the Arab world, because when out in the street, you can be fully covered.
They could wear a niqab or a burqa.
It's unbelievable. I mean, that's just like, so what the Arab world has done for the world of espionage is give us an advantage.
Hilarious.
Because women are covered.
So Sharia is actually helping.
It's helping, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, actually, I want to talk about that also, because that's crazy.
No, I'm very much following kind of the protests in Iran, which is extraordinary. These are it's kind of ground roots. Female protesters, against the hijab, against the idea of being covered.
Right.
But again, but just that's kind of an amusing note that the idea of we could send female case officers out fully covered, and they would go. You call it going black.
Can I give you some CIA advice?
Oh, sure.
You could also send out male case officers. Also put them in a niqab.
Good.
Like, I mean, they might be like 6'3", but like
it's a little weird.
But you could
stop, yeah.
Like, why put on the Groucho Marx mustache when you?
So here's a great story, and again, I'm stealing it from the book. We had a female case officer in the Middle East, and she was out on a surveillance detection route, and she was actually seen, which is unusual because you for whatever reason, and we had a penetration of that government, and we received a report from an agent saying that this female from the U.S. Embassy was seen definitely on an operational act. But it gets better, because they said, because again, this is a very misogynistic, male-dominated society. They said, well, she can't be a spy because a girl can't be a spy.
Hilarious.
So we're going to suspect and put surveillance on her husband, who was also a member at the embassy, and of course he hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
She got caught, and she never had surveillance the rest of the tour. He did. And he's like, what the fuck? What did I do?
That's so funny.
But we laughed at that because, again, and what is that? Why is that important? Because what we're doing is trying to find a way to kind of beat our adversary.
Right.
And if they had that kind of, they were misogynistic, male-dominated view of women, horrible. But for us, actually kind of good.
Right.
Because we're going to beat you every time on that.
And they're completely unassuming.
And so it really worked out. I love that story because people ask me all the time, what's the role of female operations officers? And I'm like, well, they're really fucking good. And in fact, in the Middle East, they're better than men.
Are there more now than there were 20 years ago?
Yep.
And is there like a concerted effort to be like,
yes.
oh, we should get more women?
So look, the CIA, just like everything else in kind of in life and in society, was certainly racked by sexism.
Sure.
And I wouldn't necessarily say and well, certainly years ago, racism too. But there was definitely an absence of both minority and female operations officers, and it's just in the director of operations, which was male dominated for a long time. We've gotten much better at it. We're not where we need to be. One of the things I really tried at the end of my career was to put as many really qualified female and minority officers in management positions, because again, it's the idea, it's right for all those reasons you think it's right. It's also the best athlete approach too, because again, we're going to win on the streets. I mean, we once had again, if you know the Middle East,
I don't.
South Asians, but in essence, there's a huge community of Filipinos in the Middle East that's part of the servant class.
Oh, really?
Rich Gulf Arabs will hire Filipinos as their servants. We had a Filipino-American CIA case officer. This fucker could go everywhere because the host country would never suspect that what they considered part of the servant class was actually a spy. And this CIA officer could literally walk into the intelligence service headquarters of that country and walk around because they thought he was a street sweeper.
Crazy. So like
so what I'm saying is that's the best athlete approach, and that's why we need a really diverse cadre of operations officers.
Right. And you're able to exploit like class or racial disparities in the country and be like, hey, you think that Filipinos are stupid.
Yeah.
Watch, we're going to put this genius guy to go in there. And he's going to.
So that even with myself, who, looks pretty white. But I
would say that you look Greek.
Well, I'm Greek, but I
would say swarthy.
Swarthy. That's great. but as a Greek American, and my wife, who was an agency officer as well, as a Lebanese background, there were plenty of times where people knew we were affiliated with the U.S. Embassy, no doubt, but they literally would say, "Well, hey, your wife's Lebanese, you're Greek, you're kind of one of us. This is in the Arab world, and so use that to your advantage."
Interesting.
Absolutely, and so. But I think we still have a long way to go in terms of ensuring that there's kind of the right mix of diversity at the agency. But it's gotten so much better.
Can you talk to me about honeypots?
Yeah, so we don't do that. The Russians do it. Other countries.
America doesn't.
So a honeypot operation is essentially using sex to recruit somebody.
Mm-hmm. Which I would love to do.
That's right. If you volunteer,
as a role.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm going to send you off into Russian. The Russian women are beautiful. So
whoever really, whatever it takes to protect our country.
There you go.
Okay?
It's out of patriotism.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell my wife.
But essentially, honeypots are used, and the other countries have used this very successfully for us against us. We don't use it because I never. And the CIA just doesn't believe that that's a way to actually. It's coercive. That's not a way to recruit somebody. You have to recruit someone based on motivations that are a little more kind of sincere than kind of throwing a female or a male at someone. And so one of the things that we would tell people is, if you go off to, there's famous stories of whether it's in Lebanon where the women are beautiful or Russia when the women are beautiful. Well, if you're rolling out as a male who's kind of a 3, and all of a sudden you got a 9 or a 10 at a bar acting, very friendly towards you, you got to think about. Unless you have had this kind of incredible transformation over your 3 or 4 beers, they're there for different reasons. You got to be super careful. But other countries definitely do it, and they do it successfully. We just don't do it because I think ethically and morally, Americans are very puritanical about sex.
Is that something they train for?
Yeah, they do. And so in the Soviet Union, the KGB used to have a school. There's a great book, and I think it's called Red Sparrow, and it was made into a movie. But the KGB used to have a school that actually would train female KGB officers, and so there's also like ethical stuff here. It's not prostitution, but it's prostituting themselves to compromise a NATO official, and then eventually coercively recruit them. But I just think we don't do it for those kind of ethical reasons, but also it's not a good way to get your hooks into someone.
What about information?
Yeah, it just doesn't. It's not the because it doesn't last. So you want a recruitment operation to last.
It's a lot of time and money, and if it's like a 2-night thing,
but it's also coercive. It's in the sense of you're forcing someone to do something they don't want to do. A great recruitment is when the agent candidate, the Russian, Iranian, Chinese official, says to you almost if you recruit someone and it's going well, they've recruited themselves because they're like, you know what, you've taught me so much about the greatness of America, and I've experienced this, and I know I've helped you, with some reports, and you've given me some information because my kid is sick, and you see where I'm going on this.
Yeah, of course.
Or that was a really fun trip we took to Qatar for the World Cup.
I remember that.
Yeah. But ultimately, and so they're like, I want to do this, not that I'm going to be coerced into doing something.
So anything like blackmail.
Other countries do it. We don't.
Right. And is there counter training for that? Like, are we teaching
so
US
if you're a
like,
freaking gnarly, ugly dude,
just be like
some chick who's a 10 comes up to you, like, same thing on the other side. Right. If you're not the greatest looking female and someone who looks like, I don't know, Brad Pitt comes up to you, you got to think twice about that.
And they coach you on that. And they're like, hey, don't fall for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like ask these questions.
Yeah, especially when you go to places which is known to have kind of, when I say this sounds stupid, but really good looking people. And that service does that.
Oh, wild.
Yeah, so it's just it's one of those things, but you got to be kind of careful of it, and I think that that's you look at Americans who have been so it's been used successfully against the United States. There are plenty of American U.S. government officials who have fallen for these things.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Do you think it still happens?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's crazy.
I mean, what's that? So again, okay, this is a perfect time to say this. So what's the second oldest profession?
Second oldest profession is spying.
Espionage. What's the first oldest?
Prostitution.
Prostitution. So sex is a huge allure in life.
Yeah.
And so other countries have definitely used that.
Do you know any examples that have happened in U.S. history?
I got it. I mean, there's certainly I'd have to go back and look at kind of spy scandals, but you could find that pretty easily where people were, essentially kind of duped. And then it's ultimately all these things. It's sad in the end because. And this is going to sound terrible, but if someone's spying for ideology, okay, there's some nobility there, I suppose. I mean, so if somehow an American. I mean, you look back to kind of the old kind of British spy rings, where these were British government officials and the British intelligence service who actually were secret communists. You kind of understand, and they were, and some were caught, and then some fled to Moscow, but they were doing it because they believed in something. If you have a poor, I don't know, an American secretary at the U.S. embassy somewhere who then has this romance with someone who is the most, beautiful man she's ever met. Ultimately, she gets caught for spying. This is devastating because she's going to go to jail forever. But also, it's kind of she's broken personally.
Yeah.
So there's just that huge betrayal there, and so
right.
pretty nasty.
You bring up the moral issue, and other countries use this. And it's maybe effective for other countries. Right. However, the U.S. doesn't do it because it's immoral.
Yeah.
So to that end,
and it's ineffective too for the long term.